An introduction to the book of Romans. Let's get started. The book of Romans is in the New Testament of the Bible and is attributed to the Apostle Paul. It is believed to have been written around 56 to 58 AD, almost 30 years after Yeshua ascended to heaven. The main message of Paul to the Romans revolves around the concept of salvation through faith in the Messiah, Yeshua. Paul also addresses the divisiveness between the Jew and Gentile believer, answering the question, how should the Gentiles, the uncircumcised, participate within the first century Jewish Messianic community? Now, the traditional Sunday Christian interpretation of Romans believes that Romans teaches against the law. Traditional Sunday Christianity claims that Romans contrasts the law of Moses with grace, explaining that the law has been replaced by grace. But in this series on this channel, I want to dismantle this false assumption of Paul and the book of Romans, which is taught by most traditional Sunday Christian churches, by introducing the idea that Paul was a full-fledged Jew before and after he turned to Yeshua, which means he kept Torah, the law, and promoted Torah, the law, before and after coming to Messiah. If we accept this presupposition that Paul was a Jew, the Hebrew of Hebrews, and he was pro-law, pronomian, we then can start to realize that we must read Romans from a pronomian Hebraic lens, which then begins to show us how this completely changes the meaning of Paul's letter to the Romans into a proper context. Hallelujah. Here are some key truths I want to introduce to you before we start Romans. Number one, Paul did not abandon his Jewish pro-Torah Hebraic faith to leap into a totally new religion of Greek Gnosticism. Number two, Paul spoke like a Jew, wrote like a Jew, and debated like a Jew. Key phrases such as, "What shall we say then?" is a common Jewish way of building up an opponent's argument so that it can be later on torn down by a phrase such as, "May it never be." When we keep this in mind, Paul suddenly isn't contradicting himself, as some assume, but instead, Paul is speaking and debating like a highly educated Jewish rabbi, and his letters become much more clear to understand. Number three, the book of Romans is Paul's halakha, which is his application and interpretation of the Gospels and Torah. Paul's halakha comes from Yeshua Messiah and his time in school with Rabbi Gamliel. I look forward to this series and I hope it blesses you in your journey to better understand Paul, and more specifically, the book of Romans. Please share your thoughts below. Thank you and shalom.